Hi everyone, it's Henry from FineLimeGames, and today we're going to be going over the birds from the two-player starter set, Birds versus Fish. Um, just posted the fish one not too long ago, and now we're going to go ahead and get into the birds, starting with the goldfinch. The goldfinch is basically a similar version of the minnow for the fish. It is a 3 cost that forages for 2. Has 2 health, 2 attack, 6 speed, so just slightly better in combat. Not that I would ever use it in that way, but it has a 12 plus for evasion, which is a 45% chance to dodge, which is quite good, and it can be boosted by other adaptations in this set, as I'll show you in a little while. Also has an interesting ability. At the start of the management phase, you can sacrifice it and draw 1 card. You're probably not going to want to do that all too much, but it is something that you can do if you need a card in a pinch. Moving on to the American Robin. 5 costs that forages for 3, and it forages for an additional +1 in grassland biomes. Not too many grassland biomes, but there are a couple. There's the plains in the mammals versus reptiles and amphibians starter set, and there is another one that it comes out in the core set. So the Robin is pretty good. You can definitely build your objectives around it to get the full +4, which makes it quite good actually. It also has 3 health, 2 attack, 5 speed, and decent evasion at 14 plus. That is something that's consistent throughout all the birds. One of their hallmarks is their ability to evade quite well, and a lot of their adaptations help them do that as well. You know, quite the advantage to be able to fly. Next up, we have the Blue Jay, a bit more expensive at 7 food, forages for 3, so not a great forager, but it can get the job done. Has 4 health, 4 attack, 1 defense. Surprisingly tanky for a low-cost bird, along with a 14 plus evasion and 6 speed. All around a very good stat line. Opposing animals with 5 or less max health cannot target this animal with attacks. This can be situationally very strong, especially early game if you plop one of these in your front row and your opponent doesn't have anything with more than 5 health. They simply cannot declare attacks, and your Blue Jay cannot be attacked, and nothing else you control can be attacked. So, as long as this is the only thing in your front row, it can do a very good job of protecting your back row. It's also a pretty good forager if you need it to be, and a very effective early game attacker. All around, a very strong early game creature. Sorry, early game animal. Next up, we get a bit bigger here. Costing 14 food, we have the first bird of prey in this set. It is the common buzzard. It only forages for 2, so not a forager, but it has 10 health, 8 attack, 1 defense, 6 speed, and a 15 plus to evade, so a very solid stat line for an early to mid game attacker. And it has a pretty good ability as well. This animal gains +1 attack with each other bird of prey you control. When this animal is killed, you may add 1 other bird of prey from your discard pile to your deck. So it has 2 very useful abilities at any point in the game. The first one, making it stronger for the more birds of prey you have, and at most birds aren't too expensive, and so you'll be able to get a few birds of prey out there and bump this to 9, 10, 11 attack in some cases. Additionally, it's helping you recoup resources by adding any bird from your discard pile back to your deck. A lot of times you're going to be wanting to move either foragers or birds of prey from your discard pile back to your deck, so you're having more resources as attackers and as foragers, so that you're not too afraid of using things. Next up, we have the common kingfisher. Beautiful artwork on this guy. It's an absolutely gorgeous animal. Costs 5 food, only forages for +2. You'd expect a bit better from something that costs a little less. Those tend to be foragers, but this is more of an attacker. Has 4 health and 3 attack. This bumps to 4 attack against fish, and fish with a max health of 4 or less cannot evade attacks from this animal. So early game, your opponent puts down some stuff in the back row. They think they're safe. Boom, you drop a kingfisher, and suddenly your kingfisher's costing 5 and hitting for 4 against fish. Obviously very effective in this 2-player starter set because you are only playing against fish in a lot of cases, but very strong early game. Definitely not amazing later in the game. The 14 plus evasion can make it a decent dodge tanker. That's something that birds need to be doing because they don't have a whole lot of high health or high defense animals, so they're going to be trying to dodge tank with stuff like a kingfisher or a goldfinch, things with really high evasion chances. But beyond that, you're probably not going to be using this too much in the late game. It's just a very good early game kind of bully tool against fish. For the last common, we have the elf owl. It is another bird of prey. Costs 9 food. Has 5 health, 5 attack with a speed of 6. No defense, so pretty squishy. Only 5 health. But when it scores a kill, it gains 1 food, and opposing animals with 5 or less max health cannot evade this animal's attacks. Again, another bully thing for early game. It is also importantly a cheap bird of prey to pair with your buzzard. Combined, they only cost 23 food, and you're looking at a 9 attack buzzard, as well as an elf owl, and they're both speed 6. So they can be very effective together. You generally want cheap birds of prey to pair with buzzards, and this is a great option for that. Don't expect it to survive too long if it's not evading, but as an early game attacker to bully down your opponent, it's quite good. Next up, we have the 10 cost representative for the birds. It is the Greater Roadrunner. 7 health, 6 attack, 7 speed, making it the fastest of the 10 costs in the 2-player starter sets. It gains 1 attack against exhausted enemies, and you can move it between rows without it counting towards your 1 move per turn. So you can have some flexibility with this. If it gets hurt, you can move it right to the back without sacrificing your 1 move, or if you have it foraging in the back because you needed that 2 extra food for some reason, you can move it to the front when it's not exhausted. It's an interesting situation where it loves to go after fast things, and sometimes that will happen. But at 7 speed, it's often outspeeding things. So, a bit of a ability that only comes online occasionally. Next up, we have the red-tailed hawk, a bigger bird of prey here. Costs 17, has the health of 11, attack of 10, defense of 1, and a speed of 7. So a great stat line. Pretty tanky for a bird, in all honesty. This one is particularly targeted against rodents. They cannot evade its attacks, and this animal's stats, or at least its defense, attack, and speed, cannot be reduced. So you're going to be rocking with 11, 10, and 7 the whole game, unless you boost it up yourself. But it's an animal that obviously the thing against rodents doesn't apply in this starter set, but against mammals, hey, there you go. That's an extra little effect for you. But the main way this animal really shines is its stat line. That's a very good stat line for birds. 7 speed cannot be overstated. That is above average, and so this animal is going to be, going first a lot of the time. Next up, you have the toucan, one of my favorite animals from the starter set. Has 6 health, 4 attack, 0 defense, with a forage ability of 5. For something that costs 10, plus 5 is very good. When it comes into play in the front row, important distinction there, you may search your deck for any bird and add it to your hand. So this is a great way to get exactly what you're looking for in terms of animals. However, it does mean putting it into the front row, which is not always what you want to be doing with something that forages for plus 5 and only has 6 health. You have a bit of flexibility there. You can put it straight to the back as a very strong forager, or you can put it in the front to get that search off. It gives you a lot of flexibility with the card, something that's a staple in a lot of decks, even into the core set 1. And finally, we have the big boss for the birds, the peregrine falcon, the single fastest animal in the game. Nothing is faster than it. Nothing will ever be made faster than the peregrine falcon. 12 speed is the cap. If that wasn't enough, this animal's ability, it always acts first in the combat phase. So even if your opponent had, you're playing against reptiles and they have ambush and they try to go first, or even if you have some way that they boost their speed above 12, doesn't matter. The peregrine falcon always goes first. That trumps all. It is the fastest animal on Earth, and it deserves the highest speed. It costs 20, and it has 10, 10, 0, 12 with 14 plus to evade, which is pretty good evasion for a bigger animal like this. It is absolutely a glass cannon. No defense and 10 health make it pretty susceptible to being killed, but it also hits very hard, and at 12 speed, you put one of these out when your opponent doesn't have a great way to deal with it, you're killing things before they ever have a chance to react. And it's got to be said, that extra 1 to 4 damage you do, make sure you're not forgetting that. That really bumps up the Peregrine Falcon's damage. Its minimum damage is 11 and max of 14. If you're rolling hot and you're getting 13s and 14s, that's very good on something that is the fastest animal in the game. So be smart with it. Don't put it in this situation Don't try to 1v1 a tiger shark with it, but if you can bring it out before your opponent brings out a tiger shark or something, then it can be really oppressive. Moving on to the adaptations, we have the 1-cost instant for the birds. Their representative is evasive maneuvers. While an animal you control is defending, you may increase their evasion chance by 2 for their duration of combat. So, just like I've said in all the other 2-player starter videos, this is the 1-cost instant that boosts a stat by 2, in this case the key stat for birds being evasion chance. With some birds, not super impactful. You could be boosting 16 down to 14, 15 down to 13, but where it starts to get really good is if you're trying to dodge tank with a goldfinch, and you can get that to 10 plus, because now you're cresting 50%, you're at 55% to evade, which can be very good and very annoying for your opponent to deal with. Also importantly, and I keep saying this with a lot of the other 1-cost instants, this says while an animal you control is defending, so you can roll your evasion die first and see the result you get. And if, let's say, you need this plus 12 to evade, and you roll on your die, you roll a 10 or an 11, you can then decide to play evasive maneuvers to increase this goldfinch's evasion chance to plus 11 or 10 plus or 11 plus, and then you get the evade off. Make sure you're waiting until you roll your evasion die to see if you even need this card. Next up we have Opportunistic. This is for omnivorous birds only. It costs 2 food, and while you control this card in the field, all omnivorous birds you control forage for an extra +1. This is a persistent adaptation, so you want to be getting this out early in a set, and it works with a few of your birds. It works with your robin and your blue jay as foragers who really benefit from this, and it works with your toucan. This can get your robin up to an insane +5 for a 5 cost, or +6 per turn for the toucan. So you want to get this out as early as you can so that every turn you're getting more and more food from those omnivorous birds. Next we have King of the Sky. It is for birds of prey only. It costs 2. You equip it to a bird of prey in your front row. The equipped animal gains +2 attack. When this animal scores a kill, gain +1 food. The card this animal is equipped to cannot evade. Very important that you remember that. Don't put this on something that you're relying on to evade, because it doesn't. You don't even get to roll the die. You don't get any chance of evading, but you are getting +2 attack. The extra food there is often negligible, but hey, it can be helpful now and again. That 1 food every so often really adds up. But the 2 attack is the big thing, and it's a permanent 2 attack as long as that animal is alive. So you can be bumping your Peregrine Falcon's damage floor to 13 and its damage ceiling to 16, which on the fastest animal in the game can be very strong. This works on a lot of other birds of prey too. You can slap this on a buzzard, get some extra stats, slap it on a hawk or an elf owl, and this only gets better as more birds of prey are released. Next up we have Vigilance, which is one of the best common adaptations in the game. Uniquely for birds, it costs 2, and when a bird you control attacks, you may play this card to prevent it from exhausting from the attack. Now, this doesn't mean you can attack, then play Vigilance to unexhaust it, and then attack again. It just means you're preventing your animal from attacking. Your animals can never attack twice unless adaptations or abilities specifically say so. But Vigilance works really well with birds because you can attack with something like the Peregrine Falcon or something like the common buzzard or any of your bigger birds, and then play this, and they don't exhaust when they attack. So suddenly you can hit for 11 to 14 damage, and you have a chance to evade, a pretty decent chance to evade. This can be huge. Evasion is such a big mechanic in that the ability to completely ignore the attack of your opponent can be very powerful. It can be game changing. A clutch evasion roll here and there can really change the game. And so being able to attack and then still being able to attempt to evade can be very, very strong. Finally, we move on to the uncommon adaptations. Remember, 1 copy each of these guys. The first one is Gift of Flight, costs 3 food. While you control this card on the field, all arboreal birds, my goodness, you control have their evasion chance increased by 1 while defending against non-arboreal enemies. Almost everything in this set is arboreal except for the Greater Roadrunner. So this works with 9 out of 10 of your animals. It is persistent, so you want to get it out as early as possible into the set, and you're bumping the evasion chance by another 1. So this, combined with evasive maneuver, suddenly, your goldfinch has a 9+. It has a 60% chance to evade. This can be very good. You're going to want to make sure that you get some mileage out of this. You're going to want to probably be dodge tanking or combining this with vigilance. Otherwise, this is not actively helping you win the game. Finally, we have Free to Move, which is the first zero-cost adaptation in the game. As long as you control this card on the field, you may move 2 animals per turn instead of 1 at the start of each management phase, pay 1 food, or discard this card from the field. It is the first example of a persistent upkeep card we have. It's the same as persistent. It stays out the whole set, but you do have to be paying an upkeep or it leaves the field. You don't have to pay for this the first turn it comes in, so if you just need to move 2 things one turn, and then you don't care about it, you pay nothing, play this card, move your 2 things, and then the next turn when you would pay the 1 food to keep it on the field, you can just let it go. So that's an easy way to get around that drawback there. Are there a lot of cases where you're going to want to be moving more than 1 animal per turn? Maybe, but probably not. So that's why it costs 0. It's a very situational. Sometimes you'll need it, but a lot of times you won't. And that brings us to the objectives. Now, like I said in the fish video, 4 of the objectives in this set are objectives that were in the mammals versus reptiles and amphibians starter set, and 4 are new ones. So we'll start with the repeats. For anyone who hasn't seen them or needs a refresher, Pond is the single longest objective in the game. During any management phase, a player may place an animal on this card and claim the king of the pond. That animal cannot attack, forage, or use abilities. During the combat phase, the player may attack that animal. If the king of the pond is killed, the animal that killed it becomes the king. At the end of the status phase, whoever controls the king gains 1 point. The player with the most points after 12 rounds wins. It's king of the hill. And for birds, that can be a great thing or a very bad thing. Good thing for birds is you have a lot of very fast options here that hit pretty hard. So a lot of times you're able to kill the king, or you're able to try and sit there and dodge tank as the king. The problem is if you're not rolling well, which is not a lot of times you're going to be rolling just below what you need to evade. So your high evasion can be very strong that your opponent literally can't touch you as the king of the pond, or you just get one shot because you have low health and low defense on almost all your animals. So give and take. Next up, we have the Freshwater Swamp, another repeat. Players draw 10 cards at the start of the set and are allowed 1 mulligan outside the normal mulligan rules. If you need a refresher on what those are, go watch the previous video. I believe it's the reptiles and amphibians portion of the 2-player starter set, or go ahead and check the rules. No other cards may be drawn the rest of the set. This includes searching the deck, playing from the deck, etc. So you are stuck with what you draw. The person with the most animals on the board after 10 rounds wins. This can be very good or very bad for the birds. That seems to be a theme here. You have, again, a lot of very fast birds that can be very oppressive to your opponent if they don't draw well. If they get unlucky with those 10 cards and have a bunch of small things and you get a peregrine falcon, you're going to have a field day because nothing can be faster than this and it can just kill one thing after another. However, if you draw your 10 cards and you don't get anything good and your opponent gets a bunch of big sharks, well, then you're not having such a good time. So, again, a lot of risk reward here. This I found in playtesting that this is a very good counterpick objective when your opponent is up a bunch, because you're kind of nullifying their advantage. If they're presented with limited resources, you are increasing the RNG of the 10 cards you each draw. So if you just happen to draw better than them, you can equalize a big deficit. You can win a round while behind a ton of food, or take the opportunity to gain a bunch of food yourself if they don't have any good attackers. Now we're on to the 2 new objectives for this 2-player starter. First is Arid Desert. The first player to score 2 kills wins. Animals can only be played into the front row, and players can only attack with 1 animal per turn. All animals can forage from the front row. This makes for a very interesting game that normally does not last very long, because everything has to be played to the front. Everything can forage from the front. Hey, that's cool, but you probably don't want to be doing that because you're setting up easy targets for your opponent to kill. This is an objective that I would never, ever play in the first set, because you want to be building up an economy in the first set. You don't want to put a bunch of foragers in the front and then have your opponent pop two of them and get to an early 1-0 lead. This is very much a counter pick objective where if your opponent is low on food and you have enough food to play one of your big boys, you're going to want to bring out a Peregrine Falcon or a Red-tailed Hawk and just trying to pop things in their front row. You're going to want to make sure that you remember to use cards like Vigilance or evasive maneuvers to keep your things in the front alive, because the second your opponent scores that second kill, the set is instantly over. So whoever gets those two kills first, is the winner. Last but not least, we have the Snowy Mountain. The first player to have an animal survive in the front row for 4 full rounds wins. Only one animal can be in the front row at a time. In the event of a tie, the animal with the lowest combined health, attack, and defense wins. If no player wins after 12 rounds, the player with the least animals in play wins. So this is one of the few objectives in the game that specifies a condition on the event of a tie. Normally, if players tie on an objective, they either roll a d20 or flip a coin, call heads or tails, 50-50 chance in the event of a tie. There's not going to be many ties in Kingdom Animalia, but if there is one, that's how it's resolved. However, this objective has specific, circumstances that would decide a tie. You want to have the weakest animal possible surviving on the mountain for 4 turns. Should be noted that the 4 full rounds means that even if you move that animal to the back row, its turn counter is still active. So let's say you have a Peregrine Falcon in the front row for 2 rounds, and then you move it to the back for a couple rounds. If you move it to the front again, you still have the 2 rounds on it, so you can get that 3rd and 4th round quickly. This can be very effective if your opponent is struggling to keep something alive, but they have a lot of threats to kill your stuff. You can move something to the back to protect it, and then when the field is more wide open, move your thing back to the front and get those last couple rounds. Another thing about this objective is that you want to be playing something as early as possible that you think can survive. Because if you can get a decent animal in the front row before your opponent has a lot of resources to be able to combat it, if you can get 1 or 2 or 3 rounds really quick before your animal is under any kind of threat, then you can play defensively after that. Also important to note that you can only have 1 animal in the front at a time. Only 1 animal can be on the peak of the mountain at a time. So you're not going to have a whole lot of support from other attackers. Unfortunately for birds, they don't have anything that can attack from the back row at this time. But they do have some things that are fast and that evade well. So there's always the option of putting a goldfinch in the front row, getting out Gift of Flight, and then just spamming evasive maneuvers and trying to dodge tank for 4 turns and then win the game that way. Alternatively, you can put something like a Peregrine Falcon in the front and just be a nuisance to your opponent and make it very hard to kill your Peregrine Falcon using stuff like Vigilance to help it evade. But with all that said, that is going to wrap up the birds portion of the Fish vs. Birds 2-player starter set. I hope you enjoyed this video and that you're excited to start playing with these cards. If you're interested in purchasing them and playing with them physically, this set is available published on the Game Crafter. MSRP is $29.99, just like the other 2-player starter set. And if you're hoping to get some games in virtually, these cards are all in the database on Untap, so go ahead and start playing with them. Build your bird decks. Some upcoming videos are going to be the introduction of insects and invertebrates in their own 2-player starter set. That's going to be coming pretty soon after some playtesting that should hopefully get started tomorrow, as well as some videos earlier than that, probably around the archetypes in the core set. I have not decided yet how many of the core set 1 cards I want to reveal all at once. I think I'm going to do some archetype videos that feature some of the new cards, and then maybe do some overviews of the different factions. All 4 current factions are represented in Core Set 1. There are 132 cards in the set, plus some secret rares, but those are secret. So look forward to those videos coming pretty soon. Again, thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe for more Kingdom Animalia content. I look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you.